Test 1, 2, 3.
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
You mean help me here if I need it? Welcome, everyone. We're just waiting for the video to start. And Kathleen, our corporate secretary, is on WebEx. She's not here in person, so it'll be a little bit more challenging for me to remember to look at the screen. We are live now. Welcome, everyone, to Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of November 15th. And we respectfully acknowledge that we live and work on the traditional territories of 10 First Nations, the Quatsin, the Malahat, the Paquishen, the Tsubasset, and Ditidat, and Pachidat, Halalt, Liaxin, Penelakut, and Suminas. And we offer our gratitude to the First Nations for their care of the earth and their teachings about our earth. And we hope that we are able to respectfully bring those teachings to our decisions that we make today for the region. I will turn now to the corporate secretary for approval of the agenda. We've got some changes, so I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just trying to find the right page now. I'm multitasking.
We can't hear you, Ms. Harrison, and also Director Abbott is here. He needs to be let in. Welcome, Director Abbott. And while we're doing that, also, you should say welcome, alternate Director Champ. He's filling in for Director Acton today.
And while we have a moment, I'd like to thank my fellow colleagues that sat in at visioning sessions for me due to my illness. So thank you, Michael, Allison, and Sierra.
Oh,
Thanks, man.
We're so glad you're better. All right. Are we ready now? I do not see.
We're going to keep having audio problems. We'll have to take back the names here.
I don't see Director Abbott either. Oh, yeah, there he is. Okay. I can't hear you, Ms. Harrison. No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. But we've got feedback, so just hang a second. Hang on a second. It's okay? No. Go ahead. Okay. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yay. Okay. So, thank you, Madam Chair. The approval of the agenda. We have one supplemental correspondence item that was received in conjunction with item R2. We have an attachment G, development variance permit. And we have a letter dated September 27th, 2023 from Sharon and Brad Hepner. And those are the only additions. There are a couple of changes to recommendations that we can do at the time that we consider them.
So those are all for R2, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then I think we have a notice of motion to add.
Okay. I sent that out to everyone. I hope you've received it.
So with those changes, do I have a motion to approve the agenda
As amended.
as amended? It's moved and seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Moving on to minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Recommendation before you is that the minutes of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of November 1st be adopted.
I have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no business arising from the minutes.
Public input period. Welcome. Please state your name.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I'm Cliff Evans from the Shawnigan Basin Society.
Welcome.
On R1 on Stebbings Road, I just wondered on that one if there's been a riparian report done, because there's been a lot of problems with water coming down the hill, and then it crosses Stebbings Road and goes into Shawnigan Creek. Where it goes in, the hill is quite steep. In fact, when the guy was working on it, the bank gave away and his excavator went down in the ditch. He was just lucky to get out of it. So I just wonder if we have any covenants on that property for the water. That's there's a tributary going in there, very minor one, but if it's dirty and if there's construction going on in inclement weather, then we get muddy water in the creek. And of course, if the coho the coho don't get up that high, but there's other fish in there. There's trout and stickleback and all sorts of things in there. So I wonder, when you bring that up, if you could see if there's any covenants for water or if there was a riparian report done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Anyone else like to provide input?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Kim Bernard, Shawnigan Lake, and I'd like to gratefully speak on behalf for today's delegation. I recently attended a Cowichan Climate Hub Climate Cafe that was hosted by these folks. It was Sunday, November 5th at the Cowichan Community Center, and it was a fabulous opportunity for families and other residents of the Cowichan Valley to learn about positive actions that they could take to improve the way they stewarded their resources and supported our natural assets. And so I look forward to today's delegation, and I hope that this will become an annual or even seasonal or quarterly rotating event so that we can continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Anyone else?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I'm Susan Kaufman from Salem. Yay, I remembered to say it right up front. Mine is just a little musing related to the last item on the agenda. I believe it's R7 about the short-term rentals. And my musing is the province has brought down a lot of changes without a lot of substantive information to the all the local governments. But for me, I wonder how our harmonized and modernized OCP will affect our individual communities in the bringing us over that 5,000 population mark in some cases. So it's just something that's run through my brain, and maybe staff can touch on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think there's anyone else for public input, so we'll move on to delegations. Welcome,
Thank you, Madam
Jane
Chair.
and David Slade. Jane Kilty and David Slade.
So my name is Jane Kilthay. I live on Pritchard Road in Cowichan Bay. Madam Chair, area directors, thank you for this opportunity. David and I are here with the Cowichan Climate Hub, a group of local nonprofits, faith groups, farmers, fishers, small businesses, and others. As a midwife working in maternal child health for 32 years, I'm going to first speak to concerns that I share with our regional health officer, Dr. Shannon Waters, about the health risks of methane gas, otherwise known as natural gas. There's increasing evidence that fossil gas consistently leaks into the indoor air of homes heated and or cooking with gas, posing health risks, especially for children. Nitrous dioxide co-emitted with methane increases the risk of childhood asthma. There are 41 studies showing children living in homes with gas stoves had an increased risk of 24% higher risk of lifetime asthma and a 42% increase of risk of current asthma. In a recent study on gas stove emissions, the carcinogen benzene, and this one really troubles me, which increases the risk of childhood leukemia, was found migrating through homes beyond the kitchen, elevating bedroom benzene concentrations above chronic health benchmarks for hours after the stove was turned off. Gas is also linked to indoor carbon monoxide and formaldehyde. And then there's the climate risk. Methane gas is over 80 times more potent than CO2 across a 20-year period, driving temperatures higher, faster, and intensifying damages from heat waves, droughts, forest fires, storms, and floods. Renewable gas is still methane with the same impacts. BC's Zero Carbon Step Code invites local governments to be climate leaders, with bylaw tools that can decarbonize and electrify new residential and commercial buildings, reducing emissions. Buildings in cities and towns generate about 40% of communities' annual CO2 and methane emissions. Most of those emissions are from fossil gas, space and water heating, gas stoves, and fireplaces. And those emissions are expanding with every new construction. As of May 1st, BC's Zero Carbon Step Code empowers you to pass bylaws significantly reducing building emissions, making them fossil fuel-free and fully powered by electricity. The City of Vancouver and the Municipality of Saanich implemented zero carbon bylaws at level EL4, the top level for new builds, for Group C up to 6 stories in July of this year, and for Groups D and E, buildings over 6 stories and commercial buildings as of this month. Nanaimo was next, passing zero carbon building bylaws also at level EL4, coming into force July 1st, 2024, and on October 18th, North Cowichan was the first local government here in the Cowichan Valley to pass zero carbon bylaws, requiring building permit applications to comply with zero carbon level EL4 also as of July 1 in 2024. At Nanaimo's August council meeting, BC Hydro reported that they now have the capacity to support full electrification of new buildings on Vancouver Island. Nanaimo also heard from local builders, many who build homes here in the Cowichan Valley, that complying with the highest level of the Zero Carbon Step Code is doable and more straightforward than the higher levels of the BC Energy Step Code. Builders also said zero carbon is what more and more people buying new homes want. The Zero Carbon Step Code allows for a wood stove or a gas fireplace for backup during power outages, given our problem with trees on power lines. Electric heat pumps provide cooling as well as heating at 2/3 the cost of baseboard heat. With longer, hotter summer heat waves, this is critical to reduce health risks for all of us, and especially our most vulnerable residents. More people are installing heat pumps as extreme heat increases. Our family did after the 2021 heat dome, and we're more comfortable and our hydro costs went down. Zero carbon buildings save families money, reduce emissions, and leave us healthier without methane in our indoor air. This year we saw large active wildfires, towns burned, ecosystems destroyed, and smoke-filled skies. Climate impacts are escalating. Lack of rain, drying forests and soils, increased fire risk, challenge farmers growing food, and lower flows and warm the waters in our watersheds, stressing salmon and other aquatic life. Please pass zero carbon EL4 building bylaws and eliminate fossil fuel emissions from new buildings. It's in your power and it will make a difference. Over to David.
Thank you, Jane. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, elected CVRD directors, staff, and guests. Thank you for serving us in local government and for giving us the opportunity to speak to you in support of this important initiative. My name is David Slade. I live on Cobble Hill Road. My reasons for being here today are my grandchildren. I have several, and I am very concerned about the future that we are creating for them. Jane talked about the extreme climate impacts we are all seeing and feeling, and I'd be surprised if anyone still believes that human activities and greenhouse gases are not playing a major role. Scientists have been telling us for 60 years that these changes were to be expected. Many like to refer to our current status as the new normal, but climate scientists are telling us, practically yelling at us, that if we don't drastically reduce our burning of fossil fuels and pumping out greenhouse gases, things are going to get a whole lot worse. Fossil fuels are amazing, bordering on miraculous. We depend on them for a huge range of chemicals, fertilizers, plastics for medical equipment, greenhouses, irrigation supplies, and much of the clothing we wear down to the shoes on our feet. These are non-renewable resources. Should we not be finding and implementing ways to preserve them for future generations rather than burn them up for heat and energy when better sources are available? The Stone Age did not end because they ran out of stones, nor can we wait until fossil fuels are gone before we move on to more sustainable alternatives. Not burning fossil gas could greatly reduce the need for hydrofracturing and all of the associated environmental damage it brings, including surface and groundwater contamination, earthquakes, habitat destruction, and also consider the hundreds of millions of dollars in public liability associated with thousands of orphaned wells and abandoned infrastructure. The fracked gas companies will try to sway you with tales of renewable natural gas, which currently makes up less than 1% of the total consumed in BC. Their wildest dreams promise 10% renewable gas, but that gas, if it ever does become available, should be reserved for those few industrial processes that cannot practically switch to electric options, such as steel and cement processing. It should not be burned in our homes. Some may well ask, what about China? What about India? Or suggest that we are currently doing enough. For starters, we must acknowledge that Canada is a wealthy nation and that our per capita carbon footprint is more than twice that of an average person of China and more than 4 times that of a person living in India. So as individual citizens of Earth, Canadians bear a larger responsibility for being part of the solution to the climate crisis facing the entire planet. Imagine for a moment that you and everyone and everything that you love are in a boat that is sinking under its load of greenhouse gases, which it is. This boat is shared by all of the citizens in the world, and 9 out of 10 of the sailors, or scientists, on board are telling us that we have a narrow window of opportunity to save the ship and countless lives. But it will require that everyone who is able to paddle hard and bail fast if we are going to reach safe harbor. Remember now that your share of this carbon cargo is 2 to 4 times greater than most of the other passengers on board. Would you wait to see if those citizens of India or China were working hard enough before you do your part? Or would you make sure that you were doing the utmost in the hope that others would do the same? I know that each of us try to help in our own way. We grow food, we recycle, we bike, we pick up litter, shop local, and plant trees. But that clearly is not enough. We need government at all levels to take a leadership role and move us more quickly down the road to sustainability. I don't know if we will get there in time, but if my grandchildren ask me, how could you not have done more when you knew that the stakes for us were so high? I want to be able to look them in the eye and say I did what was in my power to do. I hope that you feel the same. Which brings us to the ask. We ask that you direct staff to prepare a draft building bylaw at level EL4 of BC's zero carbon step code, like the ones adopted by Nanaimo, Victoria, Saanich, North Vancouver, and most recently North Cowichan, and bring it to the CVRD board as soon as possible for consideration and adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn to the committee. Do you have any questions for our presenters today? Director Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions here for Jane or for David. Just to go to my... there was mention of the problems associated with natural gas. Now, I've got a natural gas heater as backup in my home here. But there was mention of problems such as asthma and other things associated with natural gas. Can you tell me what the data sources are and whether those studies have come from, let's say, high-use countries such as Europe?
There was a document. Oh, sorry. I don't want to be on the camera anyway. There was a document I circulated before the meeting that has a link to the most recent study that provides the background about the studies with footnotes related to the cases of asthma.
Oh, that's the test, isn't it?
A planned alert.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sorry,
And
carry on.
continuing, and it also is the it summarizes the asthma studies, and it has the benzene study that was just published this year.
Yeah, thank you. If I could have a follow-up, and can you point me towards that study, please, and where it was said?
It's in your email.
It is in the email.
In the document, the preamble document that I
Okay.
sent to the board.
Okay, good. And one more follow-up for me. There was mention too, also, I think it was David, of per capita numbers. Canada is 4 times higher per capita
Than India.
than India or China.
China, we're twice the carbon footprint of an average Chinese citizen.
Does this take into consideration that the population of Canada is only 40 million, and yet the population of those two is 1.4 billion each?
Yes, it's per capita. But I would point out that borders are just imaginary lines on a map. It's really the impact of individual citizens and the practices that they partake that really is the contributors to climate change. So a Chinese citizen is every bit as much of a citizen of the world as a citizen of the Cowichan Valley.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, our emissions are one of, per capita, one of the highest in the world.
Director McClinton.
A couple questions. What percentage of electricity in BC is renewable, and do you know what the percentages per capita are in BC compared to India?
We have, because of our long history of having hydropower, we have the most renewable energy of any province in Canada, and one of the highest in the world, and that is growing because of the deployment of solar right now in the province as well.
And do you know how BC relates to India per capita?
For renewables?
India is mostly powered by coal.
Didn't you say that?
I don't have per capita data on particular methods of generating energy, but I do know that India is one of the highest coal-using countries in the world, which has got it's right up there with natural gas in terms of high emissions.
Can I follow up? Sorry, I'm just a little confused. I thought you said that Canada's per capita use of CO2 is 4 times higher than India? Did I hear that incorrectly?
Yes, emissions. Canada's emissions per capita are 4 times that of an average Indian citizen.
Yeah,
Because generally speaking, because their standard of living is so much lower than ours.
Right, and I just was curious about the per capita usage in British Columbia. Do you know those statistics?
Okay, we don't have those statistics, and I can say that in terms of the availability of renewable power, we're in a really, really good place. And because of the deployment and continued approval of LNG pipelines and facilities, that we're not in a good place from that point. We have a lot of work to do, and the first thing would be to stop approving LNG.
Any other questions? I really appreciate you coming. I think this is, in the next decade, if we don't really transform our world, we're in deep trouble. We will not have a stable climate, so I really respect you for coming and reminding us, and I appreciate it. Okay, moving on to correspondence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Item C1 is correspondence regarding a grant and aid request from Electoral Area A for Francis Kelsey. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area A, Mill Bay Malahat, in the amount of $2,000 be provided to the Francis Kelsey Secondary School for 1,000 bursaries for 2 graduating students that reside in Electoral Area A, Mill Bay Malahat, to support their future education and training.
I'll turn to the director of the area who's moving it and being seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? The motion's carried.
Thank you, Madam Chair. C2 is a grant and aid request from Electoral Area B for Francis Kelsey, and the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area B Shawnigan Lake in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the Francis Kelsey Secondary School for 2 $500 bursaries for 2 graduating students that reside in Electoral Area B Shawnigan Lake to support their future education and training.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C3 is a grant and aid request from Electoral Area B for Cowichan Secondary School. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area B Shawnigan Lake in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the Cowichan Secondary School for 2 $500 bursaries for graduating students that reside in Electoral Area B Shawnigan Lake to support their future education or training.
And I have a motion and a seconder. All in favor? Anyone opposed? The motion's carried.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C4 is a grant and aid request from Electoral Area B for Shawnigan Lake CMS Food Bank. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area B Shawnigan Lake in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the CMS Food Bank to assist with expenses for services to the Cobble Hill, Mill Bay, and Shawnigan Lake communities.
And do I have a mover and a seconder? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C5 is a grant and aid request from Electoral Area C for the Young Seniors Action Group. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area C Cobble Hill in the amount of $500 be provided to the Young Seniors Action Group to assist with advertising fees associated with the recruitment of seniors.
I have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. I love the name of Young Seniors Action Group. All right, moving on to information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have one item of information, item IN1, which is the Electoral Area I, Ubomi Creek Community Parks Advisory Commission minutes of October 10th, 2023.
For information, anyone have any questions about those? Okay, moving on to reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R1 is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number SA23B05 for 301 Stebbings Road, PID 411703, frontage exemption request. And the applicants are in the lobby. I will just admit them.
Thank you. All right, welcome, Ms. Boyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Presented before you is the frontage exemption application for the subdivision file SA 23B05 for 301 Stebbings Road. The property fronts Stebbings Road and is located on the southern end of Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake. Currently, the property is vacant and zoned RR2. The property owner is proposing to subdivide the property into 2 lots. As the proposed layout results in a frontage of less than 10% of the perimeter for each lot, the applicant is requesting a minimum frontage exemption. Staff consider the request to be reasonable for the reasons outlined in the staff report. Because the property is also located within Block 201 of Malahat District, special regulations within the RR2 zone apply. Through density amenity bonus provisions, the minimum parcel size may be lowered to 2.0 hectares, provided that the property owners provide a contribution of $10,000 per new parcel created, in this case a total of $20,000, to either the Community Parks Capital Reserve Fund for Electoral Area B Shawnigan Lake or the Shawnigan Lake Recreation Specified Area Capital Projects Reserve Fund. So the recommendation is on the next slide. With regard to the frontage exemption, the recommendation from staff is to exempt the minimum parcel frontage requirement. And the CVRD board will also need to decide in which fund or which proportion, if both funds, the $20,000 amenity contribution should be deposited to. And the EAC may make that recommendation to the board.
Thank you, Ms. Boyle. So I know that Alternate Director Champ has got a motion on the second part of that recommendation, but maybe just hold it for a second. And are there any questions for Ms. Boyle? Director Morrison.
Might have a couple here. Thank you, Chair, through to staff. So just in looking at the map of this, it looks suspiciously like a panhandle. And it's been my understanding, at least our practices, it has been in the past that once a panhandle subdivision has been granted, that we don't generally allow for further panhandling or subdivision of the lot. So my question would be, has there been any previous covenant direction language that that was applied to this lot when it was originally created that would prohibit further subdivision, and I'd like a follow-up after that.
To Director Morrison, through the chair, there is no covenant that prohibits further subdivision. Subdivision, I mean, panhandle lots are usually kind of a flag shape, and there's a portion of it that's parallel to the road. In this case, it's kind of like a trapezoid, so it's not actually a panhandle. Like, there's no portion of the lot other than that that's fronting Stebbings Road that is parallel. So it's just a very awkwardly shaped parcel.
Then my next question would be is, and I'm sure I read this in the report, but that was days ago, maximum number of potential dwelling units on the newly created 2 lots, should this be approved?
It'd be 1 single-family dwelling, and I believe 1 secondary suite would be permitted, or accessory dwelling unit, small suite.
Per subdivided lot?
Yes.
Thank you.
I forgot to ask if the applicant would like to add anything. Ms. Baxter, I think it is here, is that correct?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, no, they are no longer in the lobby.
Okay. Other questions for Ms. Boyle? I have a question related to the fact that it doesn't appear that we can, the amenity contribution can go to the fire service, which we know needs money. So I'm wondering what we need to do to bring that forward.
To the chair, potentially my manager, Ms. Pressman, can answer that.
Thank you, Chair. There was a report in June from Community Planning recommending potential amendment to this zone to add the fire department, or the fire protection, as a potential reserve fund recipient for this zone. So at that time, the recommendation was for that to be referred to the APC for comment jointly with the community amenity contribution policy. And then that draft community amenity contribution policy didn't proceed, so that hasn't been referred yet to the APC. So I'm assuming that a future report will be coming from community planning regarding this.
Okay, well,
So the zoning would need to be amended.
right, it would sure be nice to get that done before we have more of these kind of things happen, because we know we've got a problem with the fire hall. Yeah. Any more questions? I'm going to turn to the alternate director of the area.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make a motion, please, to direct the funds of $20,000 to the Area B Parks Capital Reserve Fund.
Okay, so that would be the part 2 of the recommendation.
Yeah.
So maybe we should deal with part 1 of the recommendation first, and then we'll come back and deal with that.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So would you like to move
Yes.
recommendation part 1?
Yes, please.
And it's being seconded? Discussion. Director McClinton.
A question through the chair. I'm going to make myself look silly, ignorant question. So the minimum frontage, I mean, what, obviously it seems intuitive to have a certain amount, but is there any other reasons that we should be considering for, like, how did we get to that percentage as the minimum frontage?
Okay, through the chair, that minimum frontage is within the Local Government Act as a required minimum, and that's, it was created kind of assuming that all parcels would be roughly rectangular, and especially in urban areas, if you create really long, skinny rectangular parcels, you literally can't build anything on them. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for very large or irregular shaped lots, which a lot of our parcels are in the CVRD.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? I can call the question. All right, all in favor? Anyone opposed? The motion's carried. So now, would you like to make your second motion?
In regards to R1 number 2, I would like to please make a motion to direct the funds of $20,000 to the Area B Parks Capital Reserve Fund.
And I have a seconder. Any discussion? Director Morrison.
Thank you. I'm trusting everyone will support this, but I just want to note that I'm anxiously anticipating the amenity report. I can tell you that when this provision was brought in initially, I was quite adamantly opposed to it because essentially you're buying density for cash, and when that just strikes me the wrong way that you can offer up some money and get some extra density, and we're in a housing crisis, so I'm hoping everyone will support this. I know that I will likely raise my hand in opposition, but it's just, it shows that we have to be cognizant of our policies, even something as silly as amenity contributions, because this is something that I hope we're not going to be offering density for sale when we have a new policy in place, and that this organization will, make lots available on their merits, not necessarily on the fact that an amenity or amount of cash will be provided. So with that, I'll stop there. I think we'll probably have this changed at some point in the future, and I look forward to that happening. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'll call a question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. R2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R2 is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number DVP 23H01 for 11698 Fairtide Road, PID 004008855.
Welcome, Ms. Jamie.
Thank you, Chair. So this application before you is a development variance permit application in Electoral Area H to reduce the setback from the natural boundary of the sea from 15 meters to 13.76 meters for a single-family dwelling. The applicant is proposing to complete construction of the second floor above the existing footprint of the original dwelling. The southwest corner of the existing dwelling encroaches about 1.24 meters into the setback area. They're not proposing any further encroachment with the dwelling. I'm not sure if there's another slide. Maybe there's a site plan? Nope, there's not. Okay. So public correspondence received has been attached to the staff report, I think added as a late item. Thank you. And staff are recommending issuance of the variance. And I believe the applicants are here.
Yes, thank you. Would the Graces like to add anything? No. All right, any questions for staff? I'll turn to the director of the area.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank staff for the report and the applicants for their patience, and move the recommendation.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. So when is this going to the board next week? I'm getting nods, yes. So this will be at the board next week, and we'll do the whole thing again without the report. Or 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R3 is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number DP 22E05. Floodplain exemption for 2801 Roberts Road, PID 031 700 900.
Welcome, Mr. Brown.
Good afternoon. I've been looking for my coffee mug for about 2 months, and I just saw it tucked under here, so good news. It is a good day, yeah. So good afternoon, directors. Before you is application DP 22E05 and an associated floodplain bylaw exemption for 2801 Roberts Road. The floodplain exemption request is to facilitate the expansion of an existing automobile dealership. There's the site plan before you at high level outlining the expansions and the renovations. The development site consists of 2 parcels that are approximately 0.87 hectares in total. The proposed development consists of adding a 191 square meter showroom to the eastern corner and just about 25 meters squared service addition for tools on the southwestern edge. The building will remain 1 story. So under Section 524 of the Local Government Act, a local government may, by bylaw, designate areas that are prone to flooding and implement a flood construction level. There's such bylaw 4381 in place for this area. The flood construction level is established in this particular area for 10 meters, and the applicant is requesting an exemption from that as the existing dealership floor, the areas that aren't to be renovated, are 9.77 meters geodetic, and the proposed floor elevation of the new showroom is proposed at 9.0 meters. As both the existing building and the proposed addition fall below the required flood construction level, the applicant is requesting an exemption from the bylaw. All the zoning requirements will be adhered to, and the applicant has provided a geotech report in support of the application. In staff's opinion, the risk associated with flooding here is relatively low, especially if best construction practices for areas in the floodplain are followed. That includes building electrical and mechanical equipment above the flood construction level. But in addition, staff are supportive of proceeding, as noted in the recommendation, with the addition of a safe harmless covenant as well. Not sure if the applicant, I believe they may be online, and of course I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Is the applicant, Mr. Armino, here?
Yes, I'm here as well as our architect, Dawood Madinpour.
Would you like to add anything? And speak up a little bit, because we're having a hard time hearing.
I'm sorry. No, actually, I think Tyler summarized it very well. I think it's important to note that because the existing building is already below the floodplain level, it doesn't make, let's say, economic sense to we're not going to raise the level of the existing building, and so the addition and it's the way the ground kind of steps down from there, so it would be at an even lower elevation. So the owner of the Hyundai couldn't actually do the addition. If he was asked to raise the elevation of his existing building, it wouldn't be possible. So,
thank you. So we have any questions, Director Morrison?
I guess my question is, wouldn't be possible or wouldn't be economically viable? I completely understand the rationale for the request, but I also understand the fact that we are, this is a sensitive floodplain ecosystem area, and it's incumbent upon local governments that authorize these things to ensure that we are, especially in sensitive areas like this, that we are building above floodplain, and there's jurisdictions across this country that are attempting to exclude business activity and residential activity in floodplains. So again, back to my question, was it just economically not viable to meet the 10-meter construction elevation level?
I would say yes. It wouldn't be viable to raise the existing building, but to address your point about the riparian area, as well as it's in an aquifer area, we have submitted a wrapper report as well. So all of that's being addressed to the biologist's satisfaction. We've got wrapper approval, and a lot of site grading is going to be happening to contain all of the water on site, stormwater management, so that the environmental aspect is being addressed. In any case, through another means, I guess.
Are you okay, Mr. Director Morrison? Any other questions? Would anyone like to move this? It's in my area. I would move it, but I don't think it's appropriate. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Director Morrison.
Probably should have been under a question, but through to staff, the save harmless, are we rock solid on the effectiveness of that? We don't see a lot of those here, and given we don't see a lot, I'd like to have the comfort and knowledge that it will protect the organization in the event that be activated.
Through you, Chair, to the Director, a fairly standard process in a lot of jurisdictions is to secure the safe harmless for an application like this, and we, of course, would do it up to a legal standard that best protects the organization.
Thank you.
Director Abbott.
I apologize, Madam Chair. You threw me when you said it wasn't appropriate. I thought you meant the whole application.
No, no, no.
But I did have a question. The proposal is to step down from the 9.77 meters to 9. Therefore, there's going to be a height elevation to the floor. Is it not feasible to step up to 10 meters? And I could see if you were requesting 9.7 or whatever the number is, so the whole floor is level. But if a step is involved, maybe now's the time to take X square feet and step up to the minimum 10 meters requested. I don't know if the applicant or the staff can address that question.
Robert, maybe I can take
that.
that.
Our architect, David, is going to try to answer that for you.
Thanks, Robert, and everyone. So yeah, the reason we have stepped the new showroom elevation is because of the existing grades of the site. We look at having the existing showroom elevation the same level as the existing showroom, but unfortunately that restricts our design options, and there is no way that we can work it out. That's why we need to step down the new showroom elevation. It's in fact it's economically it's better if we can have it the same level as the existing elevation of the existing showroom, but there were no other way. So that's why we stepped in the new showroom elevation. And the other thing is when we look at the ISO lines of the flood level, the building is located between 9.5 and 10, and I know that based on the bylaw we have to go with 10, but based on the geotech memorandum, flood construction level of 9.75 is adequate for this project, but because of the site constraints, we had to go with the elevations that we have proposed. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any more discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. So that will go to next week's board meeting.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I would just add, I appreciate Director Morrison's comments about the Cook Island business area. It is a really challenging, I mean, you wouldn't develop the way we have developed in the past when knowing what we know today. But how you can transform that into a more fish-friendly, flood-safe business area is going to take some time and it's going to be challenging. But I think it's one of those cases where you have to look at the relative risks of what's existing now and how you can move forward. And I guess I personally didn't think that this was a particularly significant request from that perspective, from the perspective of the environment. Moving on. So we're on to R4, right? Mill Bay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes. Item R4 is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number RZ23A01 for 2530 Mill Bay Road, PID 023004193. And I will just admit the applicant in the lobby.
Thank you. Welcome back.
So glad to be back. All right. So this is a rezoning application in Electoral Area A to rezone the subject property from R3 Village Residential to a site-specific residential zone that would permit a minimum parcel size of 700 square meters for parcels that are serviced by community water and sewer systems. The proposed rezoning would facilitate a 4-lot Bearland Strata subdivision. Thank you. So servicing is proposed to come from Mill Bay Waterworks District and the CVRD Sentinel Ridge Sewer. Some aspects of this application are supported by the current official community plan, while others are not. If the board wishes to proceed with considering this application, it would be or will be referred to external agencies and First Nations, and their comments in addition to the proposal will be reviewed against current OCP policies, and a full analysis will be provided to the committee as it considers first and second reading. Of note, an OCP amendment will be required to include the subject property within Development Permit Area 9, which is the intensive residential development permit area, which applies to single-family dwellings on parcels that are 740 square meters or less in Electoral Area A, and that is a form and character development permit area. Staff are recommending option 1, which is the next slide. Thank you.
Any questions for, well, first of all, I should ask if the applicant is here.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Directors. Rachel Sansom here this afternoon representing the owner. If you have any questions beyond the excellent staff report, I'm certainly happy to answer them, and we're certainly happy to apply to join DP Area 9 if required.
Thank you, Ms. Sampson. Turn to Director Segal.
Thank you, Chair. Question through to staff. Can you just give us some clarification, because a month ago or so, we waived the minimum frontage for a subdivision on this lot. So is this going to have a subdivision and this 4-lot Bearland Strata?
Through the chair to Director, I forgot your last name, Segal, sorry, thinking A word. So yeah, there's two applications happening at the same time for this property. The 2-lot subdivision is an entirely separate application. Under the current zoning, they are permitted to subdivide into 2 lots. And the rezoning is happening a little bit slower after the 2-lot. Which is close to being completed on our end. I don't know about Ministry of Transportation's requirements. So essentially, if that is completed and then the rezoning is proceeds, then they would have to do some magical work to basically, I think, consolidate and then re-subdivide. I'm not entirely sure about that process, but the agent may be a little bit more familiar with that.
Okay. I'd like to hear from the agent if they have any more to add there.
Ms. Sampson, do you have anything?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we have, when the owner purchased the property, he went ahead with a 2-lot subdivision and then understood that he may be able to rezone to create a couple more lots. So the process would be, if that subdivision is done prior to the rezoning, what would happen, there'd be sort of a very temporary consolidation of lots, then a re-subdivision into the 4 strata lots, which would be done under the guise of a letter from the lawyer that all that would happen concurrently or it wouldn't happen at all. So there'd be no risk of a sort of no man's land in the subdivision happening. So the Bearland Strata and the lots that were created now have been set up to be either or. So if the zoning doesn't occur, then the 2 lots can still happen as originally intended.
So my understanding is this is going to be increasing the density fairly significantly. Director Morrison has a question, I think.
Well, yeah, that's clearly the intent. Without eliciting a small workshop response on stratas, I'm not a real big fan of stratas. Is there any way that this could be accomplished without venturing down the road of this being a strata development? You know, I've lived in them, I've experienced them. We seem to have a lot of requests for them. They certainly aren't ideal in my eyes, so any thoughts as to a way this could be done without going to a strata for even, you know, the 4 lots we're talking about?
Would you like me to answer, Madam Chair? I believe that we may be wandering into panhandle lot territory. The lots are certainly large enough by urban standards to be able to do that. It ends up being kind of the same thing legally if you're going to be sharing driveway access with reciprocal easements. A bare land strata is kind of the least offensive kind of strata, I think. The owners share the responsibilities for the driveway, but they don't share any building strata responsibilities as far as roofs and siding and whatnot that you would say in a townhouse. So it's actually kind of it's not a complicated way to facilitate subdivision, and it gets away from things like panhandle lots and easements, which would probably be necessary anyway.
Would you like to add anything? No. Director Abbott has a question.
A bit of an observation, Chair. While we applaud the applicant's desire to add housing and secondary suites potentially, I'm skeptical as to how many cars, RVs, visiting vehicles that layout can handle, as well as the impact that our 3-stream garbage program that is going to, how it's going to have. I don't know how you're going to do it, Ms. Sanson, but maybe you can comment on how you mitigate those vehicles, because people don't seem to use garages for cars.
Yeah, thank you again through the chair. There have been some really interesting tools that have been deployed recently in local governments to that very point about the concerns about people not using their garages for parking and using them for storage. And you can actually register covenants that the garages must be used for parking. And they're actually kind of self-governing covenants in that the neighbors will squeal on each other if they find each other not using the garages for parking. That said, these are actually, I know maybe not in the CVRD, but in urban applications, these are pretty big lots. And there's certainly lots of room for parking for RVs. And we don't anticipate any variances from the parking bylaws. And again, there can be covenants applied if there's concerns about parking, because certainly there's nowhere else to park. I don't know if you're going to park down the road in this case. Quite often you get neighborhood concerns about overflow parking. The other comment I believe that was observed was that the Strata Road would have to safely accommodate fire trucks and also delivery vehicles, garbage trucks and the like.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I have a question. We often talk about providing a diversity of housing types. And so when we're going to a much more dense request, is this a kind of opportunity to maybe do townhouses or something a little different in this area?
Thank you, Chair. That is not considered in the current OCP in this area, but there are policies that speak to like diversity of housing types to accommodate, seniors and whatnot. So
we just never seem to get there. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I'll turn to the director of the area. You like to move forward with this? So it's been moved that we would move forward with considering a rezoning of this, and it's been seconded. Any more discussion? Director Segal.
Yeah, I guess just a comment on the fact that this is within the growth containment boundary, this is like an infill of density, which is important in the housing crisis that we're looking at. So I think, you know, this stage of going out to get more information from the APC and the other external agencies is important.
And Director Morrison?
Echoing what the director for the area said, I'm really intrigued by this. There's not a lot of areas in the electoral areas that have the capacity with sewer and water to accommodate this type of development. May not be perfect, but once again, perfect's the enemy of good. And I think that Mill Bay going to some increased density is probably a good thing and should be an interesting public hearing. Thanks.
Any more discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? The motion's carried. Right, so that will, we'd like to take a break now. So we'll be back at 10:02, so it gives you 11 minutes exactly. Okay, we're live. Welcome back. Technical problems again. Nope, we're good. All right, we're on, moving on to R5.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R5 is a report from Development Services Division regarding application number RZ22C01 relating to 3450 Trans-Canada Highway, PID 000033057.
Mr. Brown, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Directors, the report in your agenda is essentially a reintroduction of a rezoning application, as noted. This was one of the first application that was under the new referrals policy with respect to rezoning, and the original staff report ultimately didn't include a recommendation. The intention of the rezoning application is an OCP amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the property from rural residential 2 to rural comprehensive development 3 for the expansion of Arbutus RV and Marine. As outlined in the report, the board previously provided direction to obtain additional information from the applicant and proceed with referrals. The report notes that the site survey and water license information remain outstanding. I just want to highlight this. Regretfully, I think a bit of a communication error between myself, the applicant, when the file was handed over and I took over this one, and the applicant. The applicant has since, we've corrected it and since provided that site plan and additional information with respect to water. I do note, though, that the nature of the report before you was more related to the policy and the policy support for this application, and as such, staff recommendation does remain the same, but I just wanted to outline that that has changed in the report. The CVRD is bound to consider the current OCP for this application. At this time, the proposed development does not conform to the direction of the OCP, specifically an expansion of highway commercial. Highway commercial lands along the Trans-Canada Highway are simply not supported by a very explicit policy statement. And further, the existing local area plan policies do not provide support for the application either. However, staff are aware that there is a active OCP refresh and renewal process underway, and that the designation of those lands may change. And the staff recommendation before you is really looking through the lens of the existing policy framework and the existing OCP. So based on those policies, staff are recommending that the application be denied. But in acknowledgement of the active work on that OCP, staff did highlight a second option in the report, and I apologize, there's a little typo. It says option 1, 2, and 2. Obviously, it's option 1, 2, and 3. But 2 in that order is essentially to proceed by working with the applicant to redefine and better define the proposal. And the reason for this recommendation is that the CD zone exists essentially doesn't delineate any particular use on the parcels, and the applicant is proposing to simply expand it. It's not sort of typically of how a CD zone manages types of development and use. Usually it directs RV sales to a certain portion, a different use to a different portion. So as a result, the expansion of the CD zone to another parcel is supported. The applicant has submitted a traffic impact assessment and an aquifer assessment that just really speaks to the expansion of that RV use. However, when we zone, we zone for use and not just the user. And so all the uses in that CD zone would carry over to that new parcel, which includes, a variety of, boat servicing, mini golf, tourist accommodation. And so the direction which the applicant has responded to by getting that additional reporting is really sort of laser focused on the expansion of that RV sales. And so staff would like to enter into discussions with them to better define what that would look like, potentially reducing the burden for their reporting requirements, to then submit the application out for referrals and bring back a report for consideration if the board wishes to proceed with the application that is currently against the OCP policies. So we would bring back both a zoning amendment and an OCP bylaw for your consideration. So a little bit convoluted there, but try to illuminate why we're back a second time, and staff felt we should be back a second time to sort of clarify direction from the committee and the board. The applicant is here to speak to the application, and of course can answer any questions as they emerge. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Dias, would you like to add anything? Yes, you do. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board, for the opportunity for us to speak to you today. I think it's fairly straightforward. This application has been before the board before, back in January of this year. I would add that since that time, we have been working diligently on trying to resolve the issues that were required in order to move this application along. Craig Little is here with me today. He's the owner of Arbutus RV, and it may be that, I'm not sure if anybody else is online, but Sean Hebden, who's the general manager, I guess if he wanted to be online, he would show up here somewhere, would he?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so maybe he hasn't been able to join us. But we've been at this now.
He is there.
Oh, he is there?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We've been at this since the spring of 2021, having held our first meetings, I believe, with Mike Tippett. We ended up doing an environmental impact assessment in June of 2021. So you can see we've been at this now for well over 2.5 years. We are looking forward to having a more fuller question and answer period with members of the board, answering any questions that you have, but I don't think we need to add anything more other than to, what Tyler has outlined for you. So if there are questions of either myself or Craig or Sean, we're here to answer those questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any questions? Director Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Dias. First of all, Tyler did mention that his comment on option 2, that you re-engage with them to discuss things. Do you see any drawbacks with that particular one as far from a business point of view? Is there delay would cause any real hardship or more expense?
Well, yeah, I think, as I said, we've been at this now for, 2.5 years. Clearly, there's been a lot of changes in the investment market. Interest rates keep rising, and Craig is well aware of that. In terms of the investment that he will make on site, construction costs continue to climb. So, we're anxious to kind of move this along. And as I say, I think that quite surprised, I guess, in what we would classify as a bit of a 360 turnaround from a motion that was put forward by EASC and endorsed by the board in January of this past year, January and February, that we've gone from what would appear to be get us some more information and we'll move this along the continuum. Now we're to a place where it's being denied. So a considerable amount of money has been spent in actually getting those studies together and getting to this point. Sort of direct professional studies are probably running in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $30,000. So there's been a lot spent there already, and as I say, our expectation was that we would be moving this along, given the checklist that we were given in January.
Okay, thank you. And follow up, please, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
Could you, and as part of the original application, I think you mentioned that you'd started up the Red Seal training courses at VIU for apprenticeships. Can you comment on that
I
as well?
think actually I'd like to turn that over to Craig, and perhaps even Sean online might want to make some contribution to that.
This is an important point to me, Madam Chair, that this training program is going forward as part of this application for future generations.
Yeah, sorry, Craig Little, Madam Chairman. Appreciate the time everybody puts into all these issues and concerns. So thank you for that. Relative to your question, Mike, I've lived in Cobble Hill since 1957 on the same property. 35 years ago, started Arbutus RV. One of the challenges that the industry has is the servicing of them. For a big chunk of our years, and actually it's just sort of coming to the surface now. Even schools, we engaged high schools, meeting with counselors and stuff, to try to get an awareness that a Red Seal technician certification is a great career option. Most counselors weren't even aware that was a career. So we've worked hard to move that forward. 3 or 4 years ago, we started engaging with the Vancouver Island University and First Nations, because the Okanagan College has been the only place where they've done certification for RV technicians. So anybody living on the island, there was not only an expense in getting that training to go to the Okanagan College, but just an unreasonable opportunity for some people to leave their family situations. So we engaged Vancouver Island University. After a number of meetings, they recognized that there was perhaps a need and that they could be filling. We pulled together a meeting of a lot of the RV dealers on Vancouver Island and met with them, and as a result, they moved forward with that mandate. We actually gave one of our journeyman RV techs that had been with us for a lot of years a leave to actually go teach the course, and as a test project, it's proved to be very successful. There's 30 spots that were open. Arbutus RV on that first year course that was put into place last May, June. We had 19 members from the Arbutus team that attended. There's a second year program ongoing right now. Again, 30 positions. We've got 15 of them that are in there. Our RV Red Seal journeyman is again teaching the course. In early 2024, there'll be third year program. Vancouver Island University has been very pleased with the take-up with it. We've got another 10 of our staff waiting until they launch the first-year program again. And the courses, we've got other ones waiting for the second and third year, but the courses have been filled. So clearly a demand. Again, the industry has suffered from not having enough service facilities. In particular, with during COVID, definitely a big push to enjoy the RV lifestyle. So that's been sadly, we need to grow the service side of it to support that.
Okay.
So we're pleased about that. If I can take a moment, just there was a couple of things that is that appropriate, Madam Chairman? Yeah. It mentioned by staff that the CD3 zone includes some other activities other than the RV sales. Just to back up a little bit, the property, the 1060 Chapman Road and 3430, that the business on the south side of Chapman Road is, I went through a rezoning process, sat down with Jerry Giles, area director at the time, and Mike Tippett, and we put our heads together to come up with the CD3 zoning. One of the things I gave up that the 1060 Chapman Road property had was fast food zoning on it, which was a concern from a high traffic density issue. I agreed to let that go as part of the process in coming up with a CD3 zoning. Even the tourist accommodation that is noted as part of the CD3 zoning I agreed to a very restricted, low volume of cottages or suites. Again, just addressing the low traffic scenario. So we worked hard in cooperation with the CVRD to make sure the CD3 zoning wasn't a high traffic generator. One of my concerns at the time, and it continues to be, is that I don't want to end up with a property that's just zoned for an RV. But potentially, I believe the RV industry will stay strong, but to not have an option to pivot at some point didn't seem reasonable. So the board agreed and supported that at the time. Again, based on the rezoning being low traffic as a group. We did have a public information meeting that we held prior to moving forward with anything. And certainly there seems to be lots of support at that public information meeting for the expansion. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have more questions, Madam Chair, but I'll let others go ahead.
Yeah,
if
does
they
anyone
want to.
else have any questions for staff or the applicants? Director Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Little. And thank you for that perspective that at some point in the future, it may not be an RV facility, but it could pivot into an automobile dealership successfully. And you can, I mean, I'm just pondering but it would be nice that you would entertain the same sort of restrictions that you did with Mrs. Giles at an earlier time, no fast food and some sort of restrictive accommodation. I think I asked it in January, what happens, I get confused with the street addresses. The existing establishment, it's going to lie dormant, it's going to be a maintenance shed while this new one will be on the opposite side of Chapman Road?
We intend to, the need is to grow, in particular in the service side, which we service the domestics of the RVs, not the automotive side of it. The existing premise, again, what we probably envision for that is the service building that's there. We may turn into a parts distribution. We have 7 actually locations on Vancouver Island, and these days with online ordering becoming more prevalent too, we need a place to house and dispatch from. So there's a possibility of that. The RV rental, we haven't had the, again, staffing issue. We haven't had the manpower on the service side as well. So we may do some of that there. But storage is probably likely, RV storage is probably likely to be another one. There's definitely a need, in particular for people on the south end of the island to not drive back and forth over the Malahat. So we envision still utilizing the property on the south side of Chapman Road, which to your point, address-wise, is 3430 Trans-Canada Highway and 1060 Chapman Road. That incorporates those 2 parcels.
Director Morrison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a vexing file. You know, I can tell you that in my time here, I voted against the staff recommendation and less than the number of fingers on my hand here. Not saying that's what I'm going to do, but at this point, you know, you provided us with a fair bit of information, but essentially it comes down to land use. And, you know, I hope that when this process started that that it was made clear that this is quite a steep hill to climb and that, you know, good that you brought in some expertise to assist with this. Just some background for, you know, the OCP and some of the language in there. I think that if this would have come forward in either the last board or the board before that, in this modified format, it probably would have been rejected at the beginning. I'm curious to see more information. I'm glad that there's been some recent material come forward. But I can tell you that the prohibition of Trans-Canada Highway development and even more so signage has been a really strong theme of previous committees and boards. So it does run afoul of that policy that's been in place in the OCP for a long time. But I'm going to digress a little bit here in that you've already sort of alluded to the staffing issues and the likes, and just reading through the permitted uses within this zone, there's potential for 1 single residential dwelling per lot. And I would ask that, have you contemplated workforce housing on site? And I ask that seriously because we're in a housing crisis and we've had people come to this organization, which is a relatively well-paying organization, but can't afford to live here. So has that been something you've contemplated within this, or something you would contemplate within this as we're still relatively early?
I would be excited to entertain that if that option was there. Certainly, the old house, which I sadly refer to as the graffiti house, I initially I bought the property in 1990 and renovated that house and had staffing live there. I had put some services in place to put a park model, because at that point it was over 5 acres, and you were allowed 2 residents. So I did put services in with the intent of putting a secondary one on there. When Highways did the widening the Island Highway project, they expropriated some land, which put me under the 5 acres. So in theory, not allowing a second one. I don't know how many of you are aware that we also sell tiny homes. So I'm excited to explore that option. I've recently had meetings with Mike Harcourt, past premier over in Pender Island, who is trying to put together a project to create some housing for some of the island communities, because they can't find workers. Can't find workers, one, but they can't find accommodation for workers either. So it's certainly on my radar. Yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Director Morrison, the hill to climb, I think we thought happened in January. I mean, I think we knew that, but getting that board resolution, which indicated these are the things that you have to do to be able to move this along to advisory planning and to other agencies for more comment. I mean, we're realistic enough to know that it isn't over till it's over, and so there may be some feedback from agencies and from APC that we have to contend with prior to ultimately, getting any kind of rezoning. But I would also note in the report to the committee of November 15th that the Cobble Hill Local Area Plan should be considered, and I agree with that. There's two statements that are referred to. One is that the board does not support servicing to lands outside of the village growth containment boundary, which I respect. The reality, though, is that the Cobble Hill local village growth containment boundary cannot accommodate, because of lack of servicing, any development within that particular containment boundary. So even if Mr. Littlewood is deciding, I'd like to open up a new Arbutus RV, I want to go to that area where I could be accommodated, there's no servicing available. And he, of course, does not rely upon any servicing. He's going to be looking to utilize wells and a septic system, which has been approved. I shouldn't say has been approved. We've had a wastewater specialist tell us that we can deposit our sewage through an appropriate system, and we've also got an application for water license before the province. The other policy says the regional board discourages. It doesn't say denies. It says discourages. So I think even we knew that word existed, that we had to, obviously recognize where the board is coming from in terms of that policy statement. So, thank you.
Director Deck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I was looking over the notes, the report from staff, I wondered why denial was the first option and referral to agencies was the second. Then I had a second read, and it does say specifically discourages additional highway commercial designated lands along the Trans-Canada Highway. So that is a very strong wording. And that the modern official community or modernized official community plan is in active development and may bring forward policies that would approve. But on the other hand, it may not. So that seems like if we approved or even advanced this further, I'm wondering if that just gives you false hope. If you understand where, one seems absolutely strong.
Right. And I think just in response, again, Madam Chairman, through you to Director Dick, I mean, the motion that was passed by this committee and again by the board in January of this year gave us an indication that there were some things that we needed to do in order to be able to at least move this thing along to APC and to external agencies. I think we've ticked off those boxes. So our thinking is, again, that in that report of January, there was a recommendation that this application be denied, but it was option 4. Option 1 was the motion that you passed at that time. Now we have a report that says option 1 is denial. You can understand our confusion in having to try to climb the hill here to try to get these things done, to come before you today and find out that now option 1 is for it to be denied. We've spent, as I said, close to $30,000 with professional studies and otherwise to simply get to a place where it's going to go to APC, potentially. It's going to go to external agencies, potentially. We'll get some feedback, and then we might have to respond to that feedback. So, I respect what you're saying, but I think from our point of view, we're a little shocked by the reversal here.
May I have a follow-up?
Yes, you may.
It just seems to me that one of the things you can't do anything about is the modernized official community plan, and I think this development really needs that assurance that those policies would be in place, and that
Well-
doesn't seem like there's anything we can do about that.
In our early discussions with staff, with Coralie Breen, who's leading that process, we were of the belief and of the understanding that this particular area around Chapman Road would be designated as a future highway commercial area. So on the strength of that, we recognize that all of this is a risk, but essentially I think we were looking to that to say, well, this is what's being recommended by staff for this particular area, and I know that's all subject to public meetings and public input, but I think as Mr. Little pointed out, we had a public information meeting held in June of 2022. We had 16 residents there. We went door to door, knocking on doors, handing out notices, asking people to come. The feedback, I think I've provided the staff here with a copy of the notes of that meeting, that it was very supportive and very positive. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dias. Maybe Mr. Brown, could you pop up and just clarify? I'm turning to Mr. Brown. So it is very true that this has to go before the public. This is a major change to what has been in the official community plan, which is discouraging development along the highway corridor. And I know for one in my electoral area E, which touches on both the Trans-Canada Highway and Highway 18, I have heard that it is very important that we manage that viewscape to retain its rural character. So this is starting to be development creep along that the highway. Granted, not Area E, but it's we all drive through it. So it seems to me that there is risk with this whole proposal, of course, because that's what it is. It's an application to rezone. And that if it was to go ahead, it would behoove the applicants and the CVRD to have the best possible proposal for the community to comment on. So I am wondering, Mr. Brown, is there a possibility of combining option 2 and 3?
Thank you for the question, Chair. I think the intention of option 2 is probably sort of that combination hybrid motion of really working with the staff, if that's the direction, really working with the applicant if that's the direction of the board to say, hey, what are all the uses that you're wanting to accommodate on this site, and are they technically supportable, right, through the necessary reporting. That could be a very short conversation, or it could be a long conversation depending on how the applicant wished to proceed. And then moving forward, we would obviously get that out to referrals, the referral agencies, very importantly, Ministry of Transportation here, and then be back before the committee with draft bylaws and that full package for consideration. It is a little bit challenging sometimes. We're in your transition period with something like an OCP under development. You have draft designations. Where that's going to land is always a challenge. I could tell you that right now that draft does contemplate some sort of mixed commercial, but those designations also need to be referred to being referred to the ministry for consideration, and there might be comments that come back to this board as part of that package, and we don't know where that will land in those deliberations. So it is a little bit challenging with respect to some of those concerns raised in the long-term sort of policy and planning framework that has been in place. And so that's where we sort of took a step back. It wasn't necessarily a reversal. That report last year simply listed 4 options without any waiting for the board. Like I said, it might have been the first or second that was part of the new process of the referrals. So it didn't have a staff recommendation attached to it. Here, we've provided, that first recommendation is not necessarily, I wouldn't say necessarily a staff recommendation. It's a staff recommendation in the sense of, in accordance with the current policy paradigm in place, this is what the policy supports. What we tried to do is provide you a secondary motion, is if you would like to see this potential land use change proceed, a process in which sort of balances the requirements that will be burdened by the applicant with respect to reporting and sort of proving out what can be supported, with what a package that we could produce for you that would hopefully put you in a position to make a decision with respect to the application before you. So that's sort of how we tried to balance it out, and to give you some options there today, understanding fully that it can be a complex one, especially with changes in policy.
Director Segal's got a question.
No, that's okay. I kind of answered it, but I'd love to go forward with a combo. I don't know, maybe something.
Maybe I'll just go to Director Abbott, who's got a question.
Thank you, staff, for that explanation. I just wonder if another referral could be from our team members, Coralie Breen and Ali Garnett, crystal balling, if we can, the OCP process, because it seems a little unjust, and we've heard some of the complications as expressed by Mr. Dias, that applicants are waiting. And I would also remind my fellow directors that should this be denied outright, we're still going to be left with an RV facility on one side of the highway and Chapman Motors on the other. So as well as we see discouragement of more automobile development or that kind of industry on the highway, it's there. It's going to continue to be there. And the preliminary plans look promising that it's going to be an improvement over what's there at present, including the former staff house.
Director McClinton.
Through the chair, thank you. Just a few comments. Just first throwing around the word highway, maybe we could step back from that. One trip to Seattle, we certainly don't have a highway. We have a fast road. And I would agree with my colleagues' comments about the other things that are there. For me personally, within the OCP, the existing one that is today, there is enough leeway to say, is there net good here? And really, when I just step back and look at this project and what it's trying to accomplish, yes, there's some challenges there. For me, this feels like a net good for the region, for the area, and the early signaling from the community meetings seems to align with that. So I'd be certainly supportive of the 2 options moving forward. Thank you.
Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I see that Ms. Breen is actually online here. And I'm wondering if I could ask her, as Director Abbott has mentioned, if she could comment on the mixed use that is being proposed on the updated MOCP. Ms. Breen,
Ms. Breen, are you prepared to do that? Are you there, Ms. Breen?
I am. I'm hiding in the new MOCP. I was just bringing up the actual description of that. We have sent the proposed designations for this particular area out to MOTI for comments because of the increased traffic that would result from the changing of this designation. So that's out for on referral right now. As are other areas in the OCP that contemplate similar increase in densities and related traffic increases. And the proposed designation does contemplate mixed uses right now, commercial uses in that area. It's not finalized, so that's what we can tell you at this point in time. We should probably hear back from MOTI within a month or so.
Thank you.
Does that help? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, follow up, Madam Chair. I think at this moment, I'm pretty certain that a lot of the questions have been asked of the applicants and of staff as well. I would like to go to the next stage of this. And I do have some comments and some more discussion on this and a proposal as well.
Would you like to make a motion? Is that what you're saying?
At the moment, my initial, now, is that at this stage or it is?
Yep.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
At the moment, I would love to see option 3 approved, which is basically, if we go to option 1, to me, it would be a real tragedy to let this kind of message go out that regardless of what you do, there is a chance that, and I appreciate that there is a bit of crystal balling here, but that's the same in any kind of risk thing. It's going to be there. What if? They've done everything they can, the applicants, I think. I would love to move option 3. I get the sense that that may not pass with the present thing here. If we can take a vote on option 3, I would bring that forward. If that fails, I have an alternative.
And it's been seconded. So option 3 has been moved and seconded. Director Morrison.
Vexing. So essentially, option 3, if I'm understanding and reading it correctly, takes what we have before us and will be referred out. And judging from the brief interaction with myself and the applicant, there's a possibility that workforce housing, additional residential possibilities are there. So would staff be able to clarify if option 3 were to be passed, that there be additional capacity for workforce housing, additional residential dwelling units to be incorporated, or would that necessitate that another discussion, or option 2 in advance of option 3? How would you recommend that that be part of the referral package that would go out?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the Director and the committee. Challenging question. I don't think can be fully answered here, especially as the applicant has submitted a very specific proposal, and that's what's before you. I would say if option 3 is passed, what staff would do is send to all the referral agencies the supporting documents, and I will highlight that the aquifer assessment and the traffic impact assessment do really just speak to the RV use that is present on the other property. We would send that plus the entirety of the zoning, listing all those other uses to referral agencies for their comment. So those referral agencies, they take that information and provide the response. They may look at all those other uses and ask for additional clarity on what type of reporting documentation has been provided that supports those other uses or not. Then all those referral packages that would come back and we present to the committee. So that's essentially how we would move forward. Housing is not currently, other than what you highlighted earlier, in the zoning package or in any of the documentation or proposal in front of you. Thank you.
Director Morrison.
So as a follow-up, and I turn to the director for the area and the applicants, and that, you see, that's what I fear. If we pass option 3, it locks in what we're sending out, and I think that would be a missed opportunity. I would encourage the committee to at least have the possibility of that additional discussion so that staff and the applicant can come to some understanding as to what might be done to incorporate some of what they've heard here and the potential for some residential accommodation in here. And I don't think option 3 allows us to do that, but I think the initial thoughts of sort of a combined option 2, I know it's kind of messy, but I think it'll achieve what we're aiming for.
Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Director Morrison. It makes a good point there. And as I understood the procedure, if I bring forward option 3, if it is defeated, then I am quite prepared to come forward with another option, which I've got written out here already. But I would like to test this on option 3 first, please.
Any more discussion? Director Segal?
Yeah, I like the idea of what Director Morrison brought up, but this area isn't within the growth containment boundary and doesn't have any servicing. So I think it makes sense for this business, but maybe not for the workforce housing addition. So I would support motion for recommendation number 3.
Any more discussion? I'm going to add my 2 cents worth. I really find this very messy and not good planning process to go with this option 3 when we know that there has been, we're contemplating making changes in this area. The timing is unfortunate. I really believe that we should be doing our best to put forward the best possible option for the community's consideration. And I have heard, reading between the lines, staff don't think that option 3 is the best possible one, so I will be voting against option 3. Director Martman.
Sorry, I haven't weighed in on this because I think that all the points that are being made are very valid. But I think I want to lend my voice to the idea that there's more discussions to be had before referral. I think that's important. There's pieces where I think the applicants wants flexibility down the road as well, and have that sort of built into what they're looking for. And I'd hate it to go to referral and find out that that discussion could have been missed.
Anyone? Director Wilson?
Yeah, Madam Chair, on a question of procedure here, I get the feeling that option 3 may fail. And that's my feeling at the moment. If we have to go to a vote and it fails, that's fine. Would it be appropriate at this time, before we take the vote, for me to have a word with the applicants, or is that something which is not really allowed? It's not really,
I think really that's the job of staff.
Yeah. Okay, let's go forward with my
You don't want to amend it to include option 2?
Let's test it on option 3. If it fails, I'm quite prepared to bring forward another option.
I'm going to turn to the legislative services to find out if we fail, if option 3 fails, then is it possible to bring back a combination of option 2 and 3? That would be fine. Although I don't know what you're contemplating, but
I've got the motion ready if necessary.
All right, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4 people in favor. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The motion fails. So would you like to make another motion, Director Wilson?
I'm just wondering why. Yes, Madam Chair. If I could, please, and I've got it written out.
Okay.
If you'd like me to send this round, I can read it first and then send it. This would be the amended motion. The option 2 and option 3, as outlined on page 4 of staff report, RZ22C01, be combined as follows and referred to as option 4. 1, that it be recommended to the board that application RZ22C013450 Trans-Canada Highway PID 000-033-057 be referred back to staff to work with the applicant to refine CD3 zone to include delineating which uses shall be permitted on certain parts of the parcel. And number 2, the application proceed with referrals to the entities as outlined in option 3 of the staff report.
All righty, and that's been seconded. I have a question for you. You didn't include like stormwater management provisions.
I think that's already included in certain parts of the report as well, Madam Chair, and that has been referred to in elsewhere, but I can include that, of course.
So I'm just going to check with Mr. Brown. Does that satisfy you as far as direction goes?
Thank you, Chair. I think that's workable and very in line with the intention of option 2, so we can absolutely make that work.
Great.
Okay, and I'll send that to the EAD and Ms. Harrison as well now.
Thank you. So everyone clear on what we're going to vote for? Any discussion? And all in favor? Oh, sorry, Director Deck would like to say something.
So when we get back
Can you tell me what we're voting on right now?
We're voting on a revised motion, which is a combination of 2 and 3.
And then afterwards, will we get to the, that is the one we're voting on, and if we pass that one, it's,
Then it will proceed, the staff will work with the applicant to refine
Got
what
it.
they're proposing, and it will also go to referral agencies,
got it,
and then it'll come back to us, and then it'll do public hearing and all that stuff.
thank you.
Yep. Okay, so we are all very clear now. Director McClinton?
Quick comment, if this is to pass, I don't know if this is an appropriate comment, but just, you know, the applicants have been waiting for a long time, just encourage the staff to work with them in a timely fashion.
All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. That will go to the board next week. And that's the end of the reports, I believe. No, there's a few more, but no more applicants. Okay. And then we have closed, right? We're gonna hustle here. R6.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R6 is a report from the Emergency Management Division regarding Fire Rescue Services boundary extension into the Goldstream Heights Fire Protection Service area. There is a two-part recommendation before you. Would you like me to read it?
Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That it be recommended to the board, number one, that the certificate of sufficiency confirming that sufficient petitions requesting inclusion into the Goldstream Heights Fire Protection Service area be received. And number two, that CVRD bylaw number 2084, Malahat Fire Protection Service Establishment bylaw 2000, be amended to include the properties described in the certificate of sufficiency dated September 29th, 2023 for the Goldstream Heights Fire Protection Service area.
Thank you. And Mr. Schuler, I always say it wrong. Mr. Schuler is here if you have any questions. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. I'll support this, but I have a kind of a broader question. Don't need the answer today, but there's something incredibly inefficient and challenging around the approval of specific properties within a general service area. And, you know, a lifetime ago, I was a volunteer firefighter, and the last thing you want to be doing is looking at a map to see if a property is included in a service area. So while it doesn't specifically apply to this, I would look to the CAO or Mr. Schuler as to how we could initiate a study policy review to firstly ensure that any subdivision or any new rezoning or development that comes into an electoral area, if it is within the service area of a responding fire department, must be included in fire protection, and automatically, there's just no choice therein. And other questions along the lines of, you know, a property being eligible if it's contiguous to another property that is within the service area. I think these are questions of efficiency and service and liability as well that need to be addressed. So I don't need answers today. I would like to have some further explanation as to how we're doing it and how we could improve it, and we can perhaps do that at another date. But really important issues for our fire departments that have, you know, a tough job already. The more we can get into the service areas, the better. So thank you.
I think we've had this conversation before, Mr. Schuler, and you've been working on it, have you not? And I guess I also have it reminded me that I was going to ask, when we had that subdivision question on Stebbings Road, would that automatically get into the fire protection? Because you know, that's the kind of thing that really ought to happen. So do you have anything you could share with us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's actually Schooler.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Kind of faint.
How's that? Is that any better?
No.
Not sure what else to do here. I can try yelling. Is that any better?
Yeah, yell.
It's actually pronounced schooler for the record, not Schuler.
Okay.
You're a
Okay,
gentleman and a
get that?
schooler. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Director Morrison. If I could change the world, I would. But we are currently faced with this whole petition process as it stands right now. We have tried twice unsuccessfully to do a mass petition, if you will, for that area. We sent out petition requests for over 60 property owners twice, and we've got this latest one back of 13 petitioners. And I've got to let you know that, spoiler alert, we've got one more in the process now in the hopper. We've kind of limited to applications being received twice a year, the end of this end of November and the end of May. So we've got until the end of this month for any additional petitioners to come forward for Goldstream Heights. I would love to change the entire process. At what point do you implement the trigger for fire inclusion? Is that when the development permit application is received? When the property is purchased? That's going to require a lot of in-depth study to determine when that happens. As it stands right now, as people want to be included in fire protection, depending on which electoral area they live in, we have to go through this process, whether it be ones or twos or a mass petition.
Would the committee like to provide some direction here on this issue? Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can provide a little clarification on the petition process and the legislation that dictates what we can and cannot provide and how we do that. We can't force someone into a service area unless they're part of a larger area and we conduct an AAP, and the results would qualify those that don't want in to be included. There's a calculation for that. The same as the calculation for a petition. It's all legislated through the Local Government Act. And at present, that's the way the process stands. Regarding what the trigger would be, what I have seen effective in previous petitions and service area inclusions would be before the actual property is developed. That would be the trigger to have the property owner petition the CVRD to create the service. And then that way, every subsequent property that's subdivided would be included.
Thank you. Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. Through to staff, and just curious, the petitions that went out, did we get back no's or just non-answers? And I have a follow-up.
Go ahead.
Through the chair to Director McClinton, we sent out application forms to all 60 property owners. This is in Goldstream Heights. And if the property owners chose not to sign the petition and return it within 10 business days, then that was their answer. We just didn't receive a response back.
And follow-up, I'm just curious, any sense, is there issues with short-term rentals or just vacant homes? Is that a possibility for some of the non-replies?
Through the chair, it could be just a vacant plot of land. There may not be an actual structure on that land. As far as secondary suites and so on, I can't really speak to that one. I can say that this is an 18-step process, this whole petition inclusion, and it takes upwards of 6 months to a year from beginning to end.
Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a little further clarification with regards to both the AAP and the petition. An AAP process involves eligible electors within a service area. So that's where you would include renters or non-property owners would be included in that calculation. A petition is actually targeted to the property owner. So there's two different processes and two different ways to calculate whether or not you're eligible to provide feedback or wish to be included.
Director Abbott.
I'm intrigued with both Ms. Harrison and Mr. Schooler's responses. As I looked at this along the lines of Director Morrison, I'm thinking, what happens when the next person wants to develop? Or do we wait until 13 more are developed and come back to this body? What happens when somebody doesn't have fire protection and it isn't as wet as it is at present, but it's more like the summer? And these houses are all in what was formerly a forest and still looks very much like a forest. Can we not get back to what Ms. Harrison talked about, which is the minute this whole area is to become a development, that fire service is a requisite condition of moving into this area?
Are you through the chair, are you directing the question to myself?
Yes.
Well, one of you, like Ms. Harrison made it sound like this should happen at the outset, and you have suggested that you have to count on people responding to petitions. I would turn the cart around and just say, this is a subdivision. It's a rather big one. It's in a forest, and it's highly susceptible to forest fires. If you wish to build here, you need to have fire protection. We're not going to cherry pick, or as Mr. Director Morrison said, seems very inefficient, a great time consumer for you and your department.
It absolutely is, Director, through the chair. Again, that falls more into the realm of development services than when developers approach the CVRD to actually develop an area. That should be part of the permitting process, in my opinion. To go back to these people afterwards and say, oh, by the way, you're not in fire protection. And that's basically what we do. Is we've sent a letter to all the returning homeowners in that area and saying, just so you're aware, you are not in fire protection. You will not get fire protection should an emergency happen in your residence, for example. I've had numerous conversations with property owners that realized after the fact that they purchased the property that they're not in fire protection, and they've done basically a search through their insurance, and their insurance companies have said, well, these are your insurance premiums because you're not covered. And that's when they get quite interested in applying for fire protection.
And if I may, I also wonder about the person that has coverage next door to somebody that has no coverage. They lose a house because we didn't look after the property that wasn't covered.
Absolutely. Fire spreads.
So, it might be good to have a motion to refer this to staff to come back with a report on options for dealing with this more effectively into the future. Would that be a good motion right now? Oh, Director. Oh, we have the petition one to deal with first. So, but Director Morrison, I think, is keen to make that other motion when we get to it. So let's vote on the petition one. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Director Morrison.
I'd like to move that it be recommended to the board that staff undertake a review of the provision of fire protection service inclusion, report back to the EASC with options.
And it's been seconded. Any more discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Mr. Schooler. R7.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R7 is a report from the Parks and Trails Division regarding a voluntary community amenity contributions Section 219 covenant update for Woodland Shores development in Electoral Area I, and there is a recommendation before you. Would you like me to read it?
Thank you.
Recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a new Section 219 covenant detailing outstanding voluntary community amenity contributions associated with Woodland Shores and Electoral Area I be registered on the remainder lands to be developed, legally described as Lot 1, Block 117 and 180, Couch and Lake District, VIP 82490, except parts and plans VIP 84239 and VIP 87272 to replace existing Section 219 Covenant FB 109779. Be approved.
Thank you. I see Ms. Soroka's here. Would you like to say anything about this? Any questions for Mr. Oka? Director Deck, I turn to you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. That was easy. All right. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R8 is a report from the General Manager, Land Use Services Department regarding Short-Term Rental Accommodation Act principal residence requirements, and this is for information.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Pressman.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a presentation, but I'm available to answer questions. The report was requested when Ms. Gerald presented on the new short-term rental regulations on November 1st. And so just confirming we'll be going to APCs and providing some information on the legislation that allows the board to adopt a resolution requesting to opt in by geographic area. So we're still waiting for more details in the regulations from the province.
And we're going to have that report at the end of February. So any questions for, yep, Director McClendon?
Thank you, Chair. A bit of a selfish question. I know there's some other things in Area G that are being referred. Do you anticipate those would be combined? It has to do with accessory dwellings, and I feel like they kind of go hand in hand. Would you anticipate these being together?
Yeah, we're going to try to coordinate
Streamline.
these meetings. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, Director Segal.
Yeah, I just had a question about the 10,000 population thing. So like, does that mean it doesn't actually apply to any of our electoral areas, or do we like combine areas?
So it doesn't apply automatically, but because we're adjacent to areas that are within that, we have the option to opt in.
Okay, so is this opting in as a community or as an individual home?
It's by geographic area.
Geographic, okay,
So
thank you.
I'm assuming we could do it by electoral area. Mm-hmm.
Okay, everyone okay? All right, thank you very much. We have a closed session, and we have, before that, new business, notice of motion. I think everyone's received that, and that will be on the next Electoral Area Services Committee agenda, I believe. And Director Morrison?
Yeah, I'd just like to raise, I know that the board can waive policy at any time. We're not board, but notice of motion is provided for in the board procedures bylaw and not at committee. So I didn't catch it when we were adopting the agenda, but our policies and procedures don't provide for notice of motion at committee. So I just want everyone to be clear, but we can change the policies and procedures, but it was specifically designed to be something provided to directors at the board and not a provision for committee. Thank you.
Kathleen, would you, Ms. Harrison, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there a question? I don't know how you want me to speak.
Is that, I thought that we had done notice of motions at committee before.
That is correct, Madam Chair. There is no, in our procedures bylaw for committees, commissions, in the order of agenda items section, there's no placeholder for notice of motion. There is in the board, but not in the committee.
But that does not prevent you from doing it.
Nothing prevents the committee from hearing that motion or referring the motion or whatever the committee chooses to do. They included that in the adoption or approval of the agenda. If the committee wishes at this time to delete it from the agenda or refer it to board, that would be appropriate, or to just recognize it. It's up to committee.
Right, so right now we would just, the idea would be to recognize it at the next Electoral Area Services Committee meeting and have a discussion about it at that time. But if anyone around here would like to do something differently, please let me know now. Director Mormon.
So for clarity, will we have staff provide a report?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can move on then. And it's,
Did you want to read that for the public or just?
right, maybe we should read that notice of motion for the public, for the record. Director Deck, would you like to do that? You made it. I don't have it in front of me.
We would like to make a note, oh, wait. We move that the CVRD take steps to implement zero carbon step code emission level 3 immediately and emission level 4 on July 1st, 2024.
Right, which is essentially the North Cowichan approach, I think. Okay, so let's move to question period. Does anyone have any questions? Stump the chair time?
I'll try and be gentle. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Susan Kaufman, and I'm from Satlam. On the question of the inclusion into the Goldstream Heights for these properties, I don't have a problem with them being included, but if memory serves me correct, there was a report to the committee and board about the dire need of the Malahat Fire Department, which I do believe provides this fire protection. And I wonder, how can we keep adding more burden to their load without addressing the needs of the department?
Right, it's sort of a chicken and egg, but you know, if you don't have a tax base to deal with your fire asset shortages, then it's even more challenging, I think.
So to follow up on that, then that burden falls to the other supporting fire departments like Mill Bay and Shawnigan to provide those services when Malahat can't?
Well, they all support one another, I think, when they need support.
Thank you. May I have another question?
Sure.
On the Chapman Road Trans-Canada Highway application, that indeed seems very messy. And I can understand the frustration on the part of the applicants, but there could also be frustration on the part of the community. Will there be a review of this file to ensure that in future applicants don't go through this lengthy process, or that our OCPs are beat up because of delay in process?
Well, I'd have to check with staff what their evaluation and review process is. But, yeah.
Thank you.
I think that is one application where it's going to be very important to have a public information meeting well before the public hearing. Yeah.
As part of an APC and an OCP commission and committees, I know, working with other electoral areas, the viewscapes and limiting the amount of sprawl along the highway has been very important, and it's also been brought up in the OCP processes to the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, wasn't it Director Dr. Bruce Fraser who set up the amenities for the land up on the Malahat? And the purpose of that was that he saw the browning of the Malahat, and the Malahat is our watershed. And so he said, this is simple. Anyone that builds a house and makes them brown will just charge an amenity, and it'll go to parks, and that money that went to parks was supposed to buy cheaper green forest land. And so I heard a comment today, we're changing our watershed for money, or green for money. And that's why that amenity is in there. And when we came here in 1952, we could buy stumpage land for $3 an acre. And so the prices go up. And when Dr. Fraser made this statement about we buy green land for anything they make brown, maybe we need a price adjustment on our amenities, but I don't think that forest land is going for more than 10,000 an acre if we can find it on the Malahat. What do you think about that?
I think that's a cheap shot, Mr. Evans. I don't think it's for me to think about that at all. I mean, I think our whole amenity, that whole amenity thing needs to be reviewed for sure. It's certainly, from my perspective, not working well and probably well out of date, given the prices of things today, costs of things today.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Stumped. I'm stumped. Okay, so now we're moving into closed session, and we'll take a short break. I can say that the motion's going to be closed to the public in accordance with Community Charter, Part 4, Division 3, Section 90, subsections as noted in accordance with each agenda item. Law enforcement. And we're, a motion to move into closed and seconded.